Welcome to Unfortunately Required Reading. This week we are covering the Glass Menagerie, or as we're referring to it,
The time that being gay ruined a perfectly good dinner.
So this play was first performed in 1944 towards the end of World War II. What are we drinking today?
We are drinking a Ramos Gin Fizz, which was created by a stick in the mud named Ramos, who decided that cocktails need to be punishment, and decided to make a vaguely alcoholic egg cream.
That is bizarre but not bad.
I'm glad you like it.
There's like a whole layer of foam on the top of it.
Yeah, bizarre but not bad is a good way to describe it. I think
Yeah.
this might be the best cocktail I've ever made.
I'm down. I'm gonna keep drinking it.
We didn't introduce ourselves.
We did not introduce ourselves.
That is Victoria.
Hi, and that's Amanda.
Hello. This is what happens when you had to shake a cocktail for 5 minutes straight.
Yeah, so why don't you walk our listeners through what you just had to do?
So a Ramos Gin Fizz is essentially again, like I said, like an alcoholic egg cream, which is a milkshake with egg and cream and misery. So to make this emulsification happen, which will be all over our Instagram, I had to shake in a cocktail shaker egg white, cream, gin, and a bunch of other things for several minutes. Ramos's original recipe called for 12 minutes. I don't know who has time for that.
Yeah, we were talking about what kind of bar would do this other than one that has like 4 seats, 3 bartenders, and yells at you for asking for a Cosmo.
Right, like I can't think of like any of the bars that I go to that anyone has time to shake one drink for 12 minutes. Also, I spent a very long time looking for orange blossom water, which is apparently not a thing that exists anymore in America, and I just cheated and used triple sec.
Which, yeah, even looking on Amazon, it was one of those things where you had some choices, but it wasn't going to be here for like another week and a half.
So yeah, I'm glad that you like your alcoholic egg cream.
It's pretty good.
I like it.
The original recipe that we were looking at, it called for dry gin, powdered sugar, heavy cream, fresh lemon juice, lime juice, and egg white, and then like we were talking about the orange flower water or orange blossom water. And then you top it with either soda water or tonic. We chose tonic because why?
Because I'm trying to prevent malaria. Tonic has quinine in it, which is how the British Army colonialized Africa and discovered that you can use a gin and tonic as medicine.
Just be advised that there are some people who are very allergic to quinine.
There are.
So if you don't know if you're allergic to quinine, maybe stick with soda.
Yeah. I would use like club soda or seltzer water. Those are good alternatives. Thank you for joining us for Cocktail Talk. I had to get off the chest that I've been shaking a cocktail for 5 minutes.
There's also a small boomerang image of it on the Instagram.
Yes, there is. It looks good. Dare I say my arms look good.
Getting tough, getting buff.
Heck yeah.
The whole stupid New Year, New You stuff.
New Year, same petty me.
So, the plot of Tennessee Williams' The Glass Menagerie.
Right. And I think we need to say up front is that we're going to be using a lot of interesting terminology to describe Tennessee Williams, the man, the myth, the legend. And also we're going to be using some words to describe like disability and mental illness that might sound coarse or not politically correct. Either one, these are Tennessee Williams' terms that he's using, or two, we're saying this from a place of humor and love, but also from support and from care.
Absolutely. It's also really weird because we both obviously read this in high school.
We did.
And when you read this in high school, they make you do this weird dramatic reading thing, kind of like the popcorn style where you have to call on your fellow classmates. And I think we both played Amanda Wingfield.
We did.
I remember I went full Southern accent because I lived in California and nobody thought that I would get killed for doing it.
And I just read her straight because that was just my mom.
Yep, pretty much. Yeah. Amanda's kind of that either mom or Southern aunt that you have that every single holiday asks you why you're not married yet.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So, there's also gin.
There is.
So the plot is pretty straightforward. Now former merchant marine Tom comes back to revisit his memories of his sister and his mother, his very complicated relationship with his family, and as he's addressing the situation to us, he very clearly tells you, this is my memory, this isn't necessarily accurate. Amanda Wingfield is their mother. She is
Southern.
Very Southern. very Southern, and is constantly reliving her glory days in Blue Mountain. Her daughter Laura, so Tom's sister, has a disability,
Yes.
and she's referred to as crippled multiple times in the play.
Right, and it's kind of a vague disability, and it does seem like it's almost a little bit psychosomatic. So to beleaguer in Sherlock because I'm angry about it, it does seem a little bit like, not to say that she isn't disabled at all, but like maybe it's not really that bad.
And we'll go into some of the reasons behind that from Tennessee Williams' like actual life. But really, honestly, the only time they ever really address it is when they're talking about the fact that she wears or wore a leg brace in high school, and there's some stage direction about it. But Tennessee Williams even said he preferred when actresses would play it like it was a mental issue versus
A
actual
deformity.
physical deformity.
Right. And that's always how I've read it more, is that it being more of a, this is going to sound like a weakness of mind rather than like a weakness of body.
So Laura was enrolled in a school to learn how to type and become an office worker, and she decides after throwing up in class that she's not going to go back.
Yes.
But she's going to keep making it look like she's going to class. And her mother finds this out, throws a huge fit, and then suddenly realizes that her daughter has no real options, so the only option she has is to get married.
Yes.
So she starts this whole campaign to try and get Tom to find a boyfriend for his sister.
A gentleman caller.
A gentleman caller. And they end up having a very nice dinner with a young man from the warehouse named Jim O'Connor,
yes.
who just so happened to go to high school with Laura, and
yes.
just so happens to be the man that she was desperately in love with in high school.
Right.
Which is always awkward.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine my aunts like calling over one of my like high school crushes, like, oh, we happened to find this poor sap. Like, oh god.
Please don't. So after going through this very long, elaborate dinner where Amanda has decorated everything, put on clothes from her past, and tried to be a super Southern charming hostess, Jim ends up talking to Laura privately, and you find out that he is not free and available. He is actually engaged, thus breaking Laura's heart, and then leading to Tom just saying, "Screw it, I'm out."
Yeah. That I mean, that's a very nice way of putting it.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk a lot about Tom because he's our point of reference for this, and I think we both have a lot of feelings about him.
Interestingly enough, and we'll go into this too, Tom is basically just Tennessee Williams.
Yes.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about a lot more about authorial intent, which we tend to do on this podcast quite a bit.
It's important.
It is important.
Who's going to fight us on authorial intent?
Not AP students.
Nope. Not Joe Rowling either.
So the stage directions in this are pure poetry. If you had a chance to read the play, which we definitely recommend that you do.
Absolutely, yes.
There are just entire passages where Tennessee Williams gets out a lot of his feelings and just starts talking about things. Like in the beginning, when he's describing the initial setting, the quote is, "The scene is memory and is therefore non-realistic. Memory takes a lot of poetic license. It omits some details, others are exaggerated according to the emotional value of the articles it touches, for memory is sealed predominantly in the heart. The interior is therefore rather dim and poetic." He could have just said that the set was dim.
Yes, but I think it does give a lot of credence because, especially as you read this, it starts to feel a little bit like The Sun Also Rises.
Oh, absolutely.
Where this is just an aggressive fan fiction,
mm-hmm.
Which we will go into further later. But the more you get that feeling, it is nice to kind of say that at the front of him kind of copying to this being an aggressive fan fiction. As opposed to Hemingway, who doubles down like, no, this is just how things happen to be.
Kitty's not you. I don't know what you're talking about.
I've never written anything about the people in my life before.
Not in, like, every single book ever. So Tom very quickly gives you the setting. He refers to it as that quaint period, the 30s, when the huge middle class of America was matriculating into a school for the blind. So at this point in time, there's war in Spain with Guernica. There's labor riots all over Chicago, Cleveland, and St. Louis.
Yes.
Things are not financially great in the country, and people are desperately trying to change what they had come to be accustomed to in the 20s.
Accurate. Let's talk about this plastic theater term that we used and that Tennessee Williams used in this instance.
And Tennessee Williams is really well known for using the concept of plastic theater. So if you ever hear that term brought up, just chime in and say Tennessee Williams, and people will think you're really smart.
Yeah, they will.
It's the use of props or staging to impress upon the audience some abstract ideas. It often seems unrealistic. It's very blatant and symbolic, and it usually just adds to the drama.
Well, and it damn near centers on magical realism at
Absolutely.
times. I mean, you have that a little bit. I skipped ahead over Catholic symbolism to talk about this, but like in places where like the Virgin Mary appears like over Amanda Wingfield, and it's like, is that a painting or is this a hallucination? What are we talking about?
And a lot of the stage directions refer to different, images being projected onto the wall.
Right.
To the portrait of Tom's father lighting up at certain moments when he's very much acting like his dad. Words going up on the screen. Even there is a song that's just referred to as the Glass Menagerie, which is included in the stage directions. What's really interesting is if you watch any of the movie versions, they tend to include that in as well.
Yes. It's an interesting way to do theater, but I think it's really, really fun because like the fact that it does border on like magical realism of what is real, what is not real, what is diegetic, what is non-diegetic, things like that.
Right.
Film terms.
Ooh, we're getting fancy now.
Heck yeah.
So we already talked a little bit about Amanda. Obviously, she is past her prime. Not this Amanda.
I'm great. I don't know what you're talking about.
Again, if you live in the South, you probably have a relative or know of somebody's relative who's like this, just constantly reliving well, back when I was dating, I had 17 boyfriends, and they were fantastic, and all of them were rich.
And all of them had the hots for me, and I was so hot, and just... We'll talk about this more in depth later, but there's a reason why this play did nothing and everything for me, because it didn't feel like a play. It just felt like me at home with my family.
Right. Laura Wingfield, as we've talked about, is the sister. She's going to be that awesome introverted Instagram star who just has her pictures of her glass animals all the time, but would be perfectly happy just having only food home delivery and not having to talk to anybody, but just being able to play her records.
You know I hate that internet introvert, though.
I know.
Of like that internet, the way the internet views introversion is like this hobgoblin, doesn't leave the house, only orders Uber Eats. And I say that being an introvert, considering that I was just on stage last weekend. I've always taken umbrage with the idea that an introvert is just this hermit.
See, I'm speaking from a place of being that hermit.
I mean, I am too sometimes, but like we both have jobs.
We do. We leave the house.
I am in your, home.
That's true.
I had to leave. I had to get in the car and talk to several people to get things done.
So, quite a few scholars, and Tennessee Williams, to my knowledge, never really denied this. Laura is based on his sister, Rose. And Rose spent a lot of her life in mental institutions.
Yes.
She was forced to have a prefrontal lobotomy after being diagnosed with schizophrenia.
Which would not have helped.
Yeah. And Tennessee Williams was horrified by the fact that his mother had encouraged his sister to have a lobotomy. He left a huge portion of his estate to her so she could continue to receive mental health care after he died. And what's interesting is the name Rose does come back to Laura's character, as she's often referred to as Blue Roses because of a nickname she had in high school from Jim.
Because she had pleurosis, which is
not
a stretch.
Not super common.
It's not. I wish he would just admit that this is just his life.
Oh no, it's straight up his life.
Because I read The Lady of Larkspur Lotion too, and you have the writer, the poet in that, and it's just like this like flamboyant birdcage, like draped in silk gay man. And I'm like, can you just say this is you?
Well, what's even interesting too is Tom Wingfield. Tennessee Williams' real name was Thomas Lanier Williams.
Yes.
So he didn't even change his real name.
Tom Riddle.
In the in the play. Both he and the character Tom both worked in a shoe warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
They're both miserable with their mothers and sisters. They both had a father figure which was not an outstanding human being.
No.
Tom refers to as the gentleman caller as the most realistic character from the play, and I disagree with that.
I also disagree with that.
I mean, he's talking about how you just have to have um, you know, some gumption, and you just have to have, a strong personality and take classes and do this kind of stuff. But he still has like a job that's just one step above Tom's in the warehouse.
Yeah, and I always struggle with the idea that like meeting a man will fix you.
I absolutely struggle with that too because
Uh,
it's not true.
yeah, it's a lie. This whole play is just so frustrating to read in places. So before we get into authorial intent, I think we definitely need to spend some time talking about the fact that Tom is all of us.
Tom is all of us. Tom is. This is how it went down. Let me color it so I look a little bit better than I really was.
Yeah, but not even like he reminds me so much of myself of just like melodramatic, but it's completely earned. There's one line that I think everyone can quote and love from this is that whole "I will rise, but I will not shine."
So my mom used to bust into my room in the morning and do that and be like, "I will rise, but I refuse to shine." And like she would misquote it. So for years I didn't know it was from this play.
Right.
And then I was sitting there watching one of the movie versions of it and went, "Oh my gosh, that's what my mom has been doing for my entire life."
Yeah. I feel like I say a version of this every day. It's like, how are you doing? I'm like, I'm alive. I'm physically here.
One of my favorite lines is Amanda's when she's comes in and she's just found out that Laura's not going to school anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, "I'll be all right in a minute. I am just bewildered by life." So that's like my
Same.
go-to now whenever somebody really makes me upset.
I'm just bewildered by life.
Let's just all be super over dramatic.
I mean, the funny thing is that at least with a lot of these characters, it does feel somewhat earned.
It does.
It's not quite like Hemingway, where like I don't know why you're having any of these feelings.
Mm-hmm.
At least with a lot of these characters, and with Tennessee Williams himself a little bit, a lot of this emotion does feel like Tom has every right to have daddy issues. Amanda Wingfield, I don't even want to think about the societal and patriarchal pressures that made her what she was and what she is. I mean, I don't have to think about it. I experienced it being Southern as hell.
And what's interesting too is what was her greatest fear growing up was being alone
Mm-hmm.
and not having her 17 gentlemen callers.
Mm-hmm.
She ends up marrying somebody who turns her into a single mom.
Yep. Which is, I mean, by Southern standards, the most scandalized thing you can be.
Right.
Is to be poor and a single mom, and she's both.
Especially in the 30s.
Gasp.
Gasp. So I'm going to go into a little bit of history of Tennessee Williams so we can go further into authorial intent. So he was born in Mississippi in 1911. He died at the Hotel Elysee. I actually looked up how to pronounce that, so if it's wrong, I blame the internet.
I honestly, in my head, heard the Hotel Khaleesi, and I got really excited.
Yes. So he did die in New York. The official cause of death was choking on a plastic cap of a bottle, which probably came from a nasal or eye solution. But alcohol and drugs were expected to be part of that problem as well.
He really liked his alcohol and drugs.
He really did. I mean, there's a lot of reasons for that. He was gay in a time period where it was not okay to be gay and everything needed to be underground. And also a really screwed up childhood.
Yeah. Oh, I was not said in
I know.
Putting down Tennessee Williams. He really liked his drugs and alcohol.
Yeah. During the process of research for this, we've been referring to him as Uncle Tennessee.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it is, as you had noted, pretty high on the list of the saddest ways to die.
Yeah, that's so fun story about me. I've always said if I die unspectacularly, my friends are to change the cause of death to mauled by bear.
I like that.
Yeah. So if I die like by like falling down a staircase or something, you're to change the cause of death to mauled by bear.
Mauled by bear. Got it.
So I feel like that's one of those instances of like choked on a bottle cap. No, assassin dropped bottle cap into throat or something.
Ooh, I like that. So his official cause of death is assassin drop bottle cap down throat.
Yeah, there we go.
His dad was a drunk shoe salesman who liked to beat Tennessee. He was very sickly and referred to at that time period as an effeminate child. His mom hated being stuck in the marriage she was in. Mm-hmm. She doted on Tennessee. And Williams definitely pulls from these sources. You see that pretty clearly in this play.
Right, and I'd be curious to know about like effeminate by whose standards.
True.
Because I mean, like there are definitely like some effeminate children. We all have that one friend or cousin. But especially by like, those that era standards, I'd be curious to know, like, effeminate in what way, in how way.
Hmm. So Tennessee ended up working in the same shoe factory as his dad, well, same warehouse,
Mm-hmm.
and he was forced to do this by his dad. His dad was like, "You're gonna earn a living, and you're not gonna sit around the house and be a wuss." So you see a little bit of that with Laura. Tennessee Williams ended up having a nervous breakdown at 24 and leaving the factory, and you'll see a little bit of that kind of written into Tom's character,
We'll
where
see a lot of that written
yeah,
into Tom's a little
where
bit.
where he's like getting ready to break down, and even when Jim's going, "Yeah, you're probably gonna get fired," he's like, "Good."
Excellent.
So one of the really interesting things I found out was that in his will, Tennessee wanted to be buried at sea so he could be near the poet Hart Crane. And if you watch some of the interviews with him, there's entire interviews where he just goes, "Let me talk to you about this poet Hart Crane." Um, so his wish was to be, or Tennessee's wish was to be sewn up in a canvas sack and dropped overboard from a ship. However, his brother was like, "No, we're not going to do that," and buried him at Calvary Cemetery in St. Louis, where his mom is buried.
I would like to start a petition to exhume Tennessee Williams and give him his burial at sea.
It's a little bit kind of like the Dorothy Parker wish, where she didn't
Yeah.
really want any fancy fanfare or really anything, and then her caretaker, who we'll go into at a later podcast, decided to do what she wanted to get as much attention as possible.
Yeah,
Not that I'm saying that Dakin Williams did that for attention.
but did that for attention.
So the publication rights after Tennessee Williams' death were donated to the Episcopal School, the University of the South in Swanee, Tennessee. And when his sister ended up dying, she bequeathed the $7 million that he left her to the same estate at the same school.
Lovely.
Um, and he was a little bit of a murderino. I was reading a book called Follies of God, which is fantastic. It's about all the women that Tennessee Williams ended up, writing for and taking inspiration from. And Lillian Gish, who plays Blanche Dubois in A Streetcar Named Desire, she lived in the house that would become the Tate murder house in Los Angeles. And Tennessee Williams never let her forget it. He kept bringing it up every time they saw each other. So that's interesting.
Yeah, that is. Also, can we get a more southern name than Blanche Dubois?
Right. All right. How do we want to go into more authorial intent?
I think that we're glossing over a big part of Tennessee Williams,
We
which
are.
is the fact that he was gay.
Yes.
He was very gay,
Yeah.
remarkably gay. Which leads to some very problematic parts of his existence, including some men that were probably too young for him,
Mm-hmm.
and a little bit of fetishization of mostly men of color, which we're not going to talk about because I'm a person of color and I don't like it when people use 15 words to describe tan skin.
There you go.
But I think his sexuality played such a huge part in his writing, especially when you have these characters that are sort of outsiders, or they just, there's this restlessness to them, and especially when you're held down by the expectation of Southern society, sometimes you place that, you project that feeling into just a general ennui, a general restlessness. But then you realize, you go to Hollywood and you realize that you're a gay.
Mm-hmm. And Audrey Wood, his agent, was actually the person who encouraged him to get out of the South and go to LA. And we were joking about this the other day, that LA makes you gay.
It does. It does. It does.
So, which is it's just very tongue in cheek, but that was really the first time that he'd been able to explore his sexuality a little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
and have, there were underground clubs. There were, if people kind of figured out you were in the family, they would show you where to go and
Right.
talk to you about who it was. I mean, Tab Hunter was gay. There were
Mm-hmm.
so many people that were gay, but it was always under wraps, and it was always one of those things where the studio did as much as they could to cover it up.
And what was so revolutionary then about Tennessee Williams was his desire to not be as closeted as others would
Mm-hmm.
have been. He did show very outward affection to his lovers and his partners, and did so openly, dramatically, and frequently.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I read a lot of that in Tom's character. Of course, we don't spend enough time with Tom to figure out if he is gay or not, but you
Mm-hmm.
definitely get that kind of feeling that if this is just Tennessee Williams, then that's sort of on the path of where we're heading. And I know, like, especially me being queer and in the South, I felt for Tom a lot reading this, and it felt a lot like my own experience of like having to leave. I mean, I stayed in the South, but leaving more traditional South and being more of your true self somewhere else.
Mm, absolutely. And I, again, going back to his sister a little bit, I mean, you definitely see this fragile, broken, post lobotomy creature.
Yes.
Although Laura, there's no indication that she had ever had any kind of lobotomy or anything like that. But the way he describes her as spending almost all of her time, with her glass animals and with her records, and just having that be the only place that she could go, and just having such a visceral reaction to any time she had to be in public or, do anything, coursework wise or anything like that.
Right. It sounds like someone with social anxiety.
Yes.
Sounds like someone with really, really severe social anxiety.
Yeah. And
which is not introversion.
it's not introversion. It's very different. So
Symbols?
yeah, let's. Okay, AP and honor students, we've got you covered.
We do have you covered. We do have you covered.
So there's going to be some stuff in here that might be a little bit of a stretch, but I think your teachers will enjoy it.
They will. They will.
So at one point in time, when Laura and Jim are together, they're dancing around the living room, and Jim accidentally knocks over Laura's favorite glass animal, which is a unicorn. And they've made so many references to the unicorn being the only one among the horses, and being different, and being lonesome. And when he is dancing with her, that's more kind of a normal thing. So Laura's getting to have more of a normal life, and then the horn breaks off of the unicorn.
Yes.
Leaving it just like a normal horse. But it also foreshadows Jim accidentally breaking her heart when he confesses that he's already engaged.
It's also a phallic symbol.
It is also a phallic symbol.
It's also a phallic symbol, and that then symbolizes emasculation and sort of a death of innocence, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. But probably don't put that part in your high school paper, because then they're going to want to talk to you.
Yeah, true.
Well, depending on your high school. My high school, I would have gotten pulled over.
If you're like a senior, you can say phallic symbol.
Yes. If you're a junior or in 10th grade, maybe don't.
Yeah. You might see the counselor after that.
So another symbol is the entire Glass Menagerie, which obviously that's what the play is named for.
Yes.
It's fragile, it's beautiful, it has strange depth and light to shine on it.
Yes.
It's very much a reference to Laura.
Well, it's a reference to the entire family. They're all made of glass. They're all fragile. Just some are more resilient than others.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, realistically, it's a metaphor for the entire family. It's a metaphor for all of us. We are all pieces of that glass menagerie. We all stand to be broken and to be dinged up, and we need someone to take care of ourselves, lest we find ways to take care of ourselves and become sentient. It's one of those instances where it's a metaphor that isn't subtle, which means I don't like it, but I also can appreciate it.
There you go. There's a lot of very unsubtle
imagery. This is 100% Tennessee Williams hitting you over the head with a baseball bat.
Including the fire escape, which is part of the apartment, but it's also Tom's method of escape. And it's in almost every scene.
Every scene talks about this fire escape. So it's like Chekhov's gun a little.
Oh, yeah.
Which I might need to explain what Chekhov's gun
Go ahead,
is.
explain what... I forget that we don't necessarily...
have a film. Have a film degree between all of us. So Chekhov's gun is a film thing where if you see a gun more than 3 times within the length of like a media piece, that gun's gonna mean something.
And that was based off of a play by Chekhov.
Yeah.
Where the gun is in the initial scene and it is used by the end of the play.
Right. So basically, you can apply that to anything. So if a book keeps harkening back to a thing, probably important.
Also, if you watch Archer, there's a point where they flat out have a Chekhov's gun.
They do.
And they make a reference to it.
They do, and they think they're very clever for it.
Well, so much of Archer is let's just put some weird literature references in it and see who gets it.
Yeah, including squandering Alton Brown.
So we also have some that are a little bit less clear, a little bit less obvious. There's a part where Tom goes to, quote, the movies and sees this whole stage production with a magician who's turning water into whiskey
Mm-hmm.
He turns it from water to beer to wine to whiskey, or there's a different version. I can't remember
Yeah.
now. And he drinks a liberal portion of this whiskey that very much harkens to the concept of water into wine, Jesus, the Bible, that kind of stuff. Going so far as to there being a trick where the magician gets out of a coffin that he's been nailed into without breaking apart the coffin. And Tom makes a whole reference about how it's not easy to get out of the coffin without raising it or breaking it or doing anything like that with the nails. And a lot of that is how he's trying to figure out how to escape without breaking everything apart for everyone else.
Yeah, and I sort of admire Tom for that because I know I probably had to break a few nails to escape my coffin.
What's really scary too is Tom is the youngest.
He
And
is.
he's he's like about 23
I
because his
think
sister's
so.
24.
Yeah. 22, 23 then?
Yeah, because Jim is 23 and they were in the same class.
Yeah, so.
And it's
God, I'm
he's
old.
he's been given so much pressure to keep his family intact. I mean, really, his mother steps up to do some work when she's trying to add things to the house, and then she's just selling newspaper or not newspaper. She's selling the like women's journal
Yes.
as
She's an early Avon salesman.
yes, and just her constant praise of, oh, you are a Christian martyr.
Can we talk about the Catholicism?
Yes, let's talk about
Can
the
we please?
Catholicism.
So I was raised Roman Catholic in the South, and the way Tennessee Williams talks about like not just specifically Christian imagery, but Catholic imagery, like the Virgin Mary being everywhere, which is very Catholic. The use of Ave Maria, the use of you're a martyr,
Yes.
which not that normal Christianity doesn't have martyrs, but Catholics we are knee deep in martyrs.
There's an entire book
Of
of
martyrs.
martyrs.
There's a lot of them. Uh, I mean, I understand that to many the Catholic Church is an oppressive force because it is. But I do love when it is used symbolically because there are a lot of symbols that you can use, especially the Virgin Mary, this doting, perfect blank slate of a mom who's just doing her damnedest.
Yeah, trying to keep it all together in the face of just horrible tragedy.
Yeah, 100%. So the idea that like Tom and thus Tennessee Williams frames his mother, despite being insufferable, still being this glorified and sanctified woman. I think like I don't know, like it kind of inspired me a little bit.
So going back a little bit into symbols,
Please,
since we talked about Catholic symbols,
we did.
there is a point where Amanda just goes on and on and on and on about these flowers called jonquils.
Yes.
If you look up jonquils, the other name for them are narcissus.
Yes.
And who is the most narcissistic person in the play who continues to yell at everybody for being too focused on themselves? Amanda Wingfield.
Yeah, yeah. And what's amazing is we were talking about this before we recorded, and we both said that is the most southern flower that has ever existed.
Mm-hmm.
Southern women love their narcissus flowers. They love roses, they love narcissus flowers, and you wonder why sometimes, and then other times you don't wonder why.
There is a point where Amanda Wingfield takes away Tom's D.H. Lawrence books and returns it to the library because it is considered to be filth. A little backstory on that: D.H. Lawrence in his time was considered to be a pornographer. People did not enjoy his writing. They thought that he was trying to corrupt the moral order. And part of that goes back into the homosexuality talk. Is it possible that Amanda is rejecting Tennessee Williams or rejecting Tom? That's my.
I mean, I would definitely say that. That 100% sounds like what it is that it's a rejection of this aspect, but also as a parent, you never want to see your child grow up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an uncomfortable aspect of any person. Like it's this is going to sound weird, but it's like when you figure out that your mom has had to, experience pleasures that you are not used to. Think about that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little like, Oedipal electrocomplex thing. So, but at the same time, your parents want to think that about you.
Yeah. It's like, sorry, Mom, wouldn't that time we found your copy of The Joy of Sex in the bottom drawer?
Right.
And then my sister took it to school the next day, even though my mom specifically said the one thing I will ask you not to do
Right.
is that. I will explain anything you want me to explain, but
Except for
please
that.
put that away.
Right, or like the time that my aunt found all of my boys' love novels. Like, yeah, same. Eh.
Yeah. Or when you're cleaning out your drawers and you're getting ready to move and your family's helping you and they find your toys.
Mm.
Yep. Yep. Take that deep sip. Take that deep sip. Um,
Damn you, Ramos! I need more alcohol in this egg cream.
so going back, there's one more symbol I want to address. The dance hall that's just across the way, just out of reach, but can still be heard, is called the Paradise Dance Hall. So the best place for Tom to hear the music is out on the fire escape, and he is just that close to escaping into paradise.
I. This feels so Gatsby to me. It's making me
Yeah.
angry.
I mean,
It's.
I'm a little terrified for when we go into the Scarlet Letter, and literally it's just a book of symbols being beaten over your head over and over and over again because that's Hawthorne.
Nathaniel Hawthorne hitting you over the head with a book repeatedly.
That's how that book feels though.
That's what that book is. It's just every time he comes back from the dead and he hits you with it.
So if you, I'm not saying lazy, if you want to more passively absorb this book,
Yeah.
this play, there are a few different film adaptations that are available. The possibly the most famous one is the Katharine Hepburn version, which has Sam Waterston in it, which is hilarious because he's also in the Great Gatsby adaptation from the same time frame. He was in everything.
He was in everything
and
back
then
then.
Law and Order. So Katharine Hepburn's portrayal makes Amanda look insane, very unhinged.
Yes, that's true.
And you'll see a lot of adaptations kind of play her that way, or they make her look crazy.
Yeah, and I think when we finally go into does this play work for you, it doesn't not. We'll talk about that. But if you've lived in the South, this level of histrionicness of narcissism, it's very normal.
Or even, your parents sitting you down and saying, or, your caretaker or whatever, going, you need to eat your food like this. You need to do this. This is the proper way that society wants you to do things. These are the facts that I have absorbed.
Parent.
Yeah. So there is another version too with John Malkovich, which John Malkovich makes Tom look like the most immature person ever, which he's 23.
Yeah.
But it also has Karen Allen, aka Marion from Indiana Jones. But it's one of those weird things where you initially are going, is that? Wait.
It can't be.
It can't be. It's a completely different. Okay.
Mm-hmm. We did forget one major symbol.
Which symbol?
The man of the house.
The man of the house, absolutely.
So, you'll see the framed light up picture of
Daddy Wingfield.
Of Daddy Wingfield, but we don't talk about him because he's terrible and in Mexico.
Yeah, Mazatlan was the last place they received a postcard.
He's
from
in
him.
Mexico? ? And one of the most savage ways of saying you're done with your family is hello and goodbye.
Yeah, I've decided to send you a postcard from where I'm never coming back from. There are a few references in the play where Amanda basically says that he worked for the telephone company and fell in love with long distance and Tom says tripped the light fantastic.
Yes.
And then just she'll talk a little bit about it when the gentleman caller comes and then says, "Oh, let me not trouble you with my tribulations. I hope you have none of your own."
But I think that's why I had such an issue with playing Tom as immature, because I've had to step into the role of being your parent's parent. And that does something to you, but then to still be infantilized by that person. So that whole conversation where he's not allowed to drink his coffee black, I felt that in my soul. It's like, let this man have his coffee. He's fine.
I mean, like, how many different foods does she offer him? It's like...
She offers him so many foods.
It's like, eat this. No, I want coffee. Eat this. No, I want coffee.
At least add cream to it. No, woman.
You are not allowed to live your life. Well, he's not allowed to read what he wants to read. He's not allowed to spend time writing. He's not allowed to do anything but bring home money from the warehouse.
Right, because he has to be both son and secondary husband, which is a difficult tightrope to walk for anyone with grace or dignity.
And kind of a creepy image.
Yeah, it is. It is. saying this, but it does make him very Christ-like.
And I think we're going to end up bringing that up into so many books, how many authors end up making their figure Christ-like.
I mean, when you think about it, he has to do this great divine sacrifice for all those years. And then he finally gets to go to paradise, which I assume is somewhere across the ocean.
Well, that, and it's so many American writers
Yes.
use these images because it's kind of forced upon you from the very beginning. I mean, we have a whole country that swears at separation of church and state, and I mean, I'm religious, but how much of our laws have to do with
The Bible.
The Bible,
Right.
especially out here.
But it's also a framing thing, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It's that it's easy to see yourself as giving up so much.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like, I think what makes this book difficult for me is kind of coming off of the other side of that, where a lot of what I had to go through in my life is very similar to this book. And now I have years of hindsight behind it, and it's like, okay, that might have been a pain in the moment, but it was not so difficult for you to just eat the bread, eat the toast. If that would have saved you 5 years of talking to your family, eat the heckin' toast.
Well, then there's the whole part too where Amanda basically offers him a way out.
She does.
A find your sister a husband, find somebody who's gonna take care of us, and then you can skip town.
I'm gonna blackmail
free.
my son.
Yeah.
Which also plays into the. It's a very like weird like Gnostic reading of like the Virgin Mary and Jesus, where it's like, you don't have to do this whole crucifixion thing. You're magic. You can spirit away up out of here and like just no one's gonna say anything.
What's a little crazy too is how much Amanda Wingfield has also given up for her family.
Yes.
Which is basically what happens when you become a parent. But
yeah.
the fact that she becomes such a Christian martyr about
yes.
it and just,
that's
upset,
the frustrating part.
And takes that out on her children.
Yes. That is the frustrating part, because I will say a lot of readings I think don't give her enough credit, and that frustrates me.
Mm-hmm.
That I mean, it's a misogynistic reading of the work.
Mm-hmm.
To just always play her as histrionic and unhinged and crazy and like purely narcissistic. You almost have to be. You almost have to be that level of narcissistic to survive in a world like Southern society.
A Southern society as a single woman with 2 kids.
Exactly.
Desperately trying to make ends meet.
You would have to be that insane to do it.
Well, even there's the part where Amanda asks how much Jim O'Connor makes.
Yes.
And it's more than Tom makes, and she's like, "Well, that's not enough to raise a family on."
It's not.
It's not. Yeah, what Tom is bringing is not enough to keep them afloat, even.
And people read that as like, oh well, Southern gold digger, but she's not wrong though.
She's not. She's trying to find a way to get her kids to be safe and secure.
Yes. That's all she's ever wanted. She's going about it wrong.
Yes, absolutely.
Like I'm not saying she's a saint. I will not make a Christian martyr out of her.
No.
But this might be the fact that, we're 2 Slytherins sitting in a room. After drinking gin, I don't see her as this beast that a lot of writers like to make it sound like she is.
Right.
And that frustrates the heck out of me.
And I mean, so much of it is, probably our upbringings too.
Yeah, I think so.
I was raised by a single mom who came from a very Southern household. My grandparents were from Tennessee and Arkansas.
Yeah. Oh.
And
that's really South.
And my dad, rest his soul, was a very complicated man,
mm-hmm.
and my mom and him just obviously did not get along. Oh, this is so personal.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I grew up with that phrase, you can fall in love with a rich man just as easy as you can fall in love with a poor man.
That is true. That is. Do you remember that horrifying Don Bluth movie, Thumbelina?
Yes.
Where it's that weird frog burlesque charo dancer.
Okay, I forgot that part, but now it's coming back. I think I had blocked that image.
And then
out.
Also the mouse who's trying to get her to marry the mole.
Yes.
Because of money. That, yeah, we say that's horrible and anti-feminist now, but also not false.
Right.
Sometimes you just gotta marry the mole.
And a lot of times, where our parents come from or our guardians come from is the this is what I've had to live through. This is what I've seen my friends have to live through. This is what my friends' kids have had to live through. I don't want that for you.
Yes.
Let me do everything I can to try and prevent you from being in pain. But
I also have damage, so
right.
I'm going to do this in all of the ways that I was taught, which is still wrong.
And our parents are human. We're human.
Mine weren't. I was raised by demons.
You were raised by demons.
Kidding.
And I think that's one of the things you don't necessarily see when you're reading this in high school is
yes.
Your parents are human beings who have lived through their own lives
right.
and had their own tragedies, their own misfortunes, their own great moments that they're going to keep reliving with you.
Right.
And then as you get older and reread it, you go, oh, yeah, that's right, because I lived through my 20s.
Right, and to get to the part of did this work for us in high school, it worked for me seeing things through Tom's eyes because I felt that a lot in high school. I felt horribly stifled and all those things. And even now, as a year old, who's just now had a few years removed from my family, I see Amanda in more of a sympathetic light because honestly, if you read this and you read Amanda Wingfield, that's like my aunt and my mom in one person. It's my aunt, my mom, my grandma, all in one person, which sounds horrifying but is true. That is who I was raised by, essentially, with slightly better circumstances. So it was almost harder to read this again because it didn't feel like a play. It's why I can't watch Tyler Perry movies. It's like this is just my family reunion with more attractive people. It's true.
I'm just like picturing that now.
Well, like it's a common criticism of Tyler Perry of if you're of color, which I am of color, that black people don't see Tyler Perry movies. It's mostly it's a very white friendly version of blackness, and black people don't see his movies because that's just our existence. I don't need to see it. We all have that family reunion with the aunt who's too loud and the light-skinned cousin that everyone makes fun of, and the matriarch who's probably about 1,000 years old and is disappointed in every choice you've made.
Isn't it weird too how sometimes the matriarch in your family will be disappointed in all your choices, even though those are the choices they asked you to make?
Yeah, no, 100%. I struggled with that a lot. Moving out and getting to be on my own. It's like, well, you moved away. It's like, isn't that what you wanted? It's like, yes, but no.
You're like, so you're mad that I figured out my life.
And I did exactly what you wanted me to do. And I did it. And now you're angry. The South. Southern parenting in a nutshell.
Meanwhile, all our listeners in California are laughing.
I'm sorry, Yankee listeners. I'm sorry that you were raised on wheat grass and chia seeds.
So I just recently found out, and this kind of has nothing to do with anything, so I apologize. Evidently, people in Savannah don't read Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil and don't watch the movie. They just refer to it as the book.
Yeah, I can see that.
My husband's from Savannah, and I go, well, have you ever seen the movie? And he goes, no, why would I watch the movie?
Right.
Yeah.
So I do think it's interesting reading. I think this would be great if you are a Yankee. If you've never been, if you want a good distillation of Southern culture, this and BoJack Horseman, surprisingly. Well, no, his mother Beatrice is Amanda Wingfield.
There you go.
I'm not kidding. Just histrionic and insane and manipulative and bitter, and it's either watch BoJack Horseman or read this or do both and be really sad and need a drink.
Definitely need a drink. That's kind of what we did anyway.
That is exactly what we did.
We made a drink.
There's no kind of. We made a drink.
So I do want to say thank you for a little bit of source material here.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you to, there's a podcast called Close Reads that did a lot of really good research. They tend to take plays and books and go a little bit farther in depth than you probably will get in your regular high school courses or just reading it on your own.
Yes.
Also, I did reference a book called Follies of God. Bear with me 1 second. I'm going to get you the actual name. I did not save it. James Grissom. So just a fun little story in this book. At one point in time, James Grissom wrote a letter to Tennessee Williams and included some of his own writing. And Tennessee Williams called him out of the blue, and his mom James' mom answered the phone and said, "This guy is calling and saying he's Tennessee Williams. There's no way that's true. Do you want to take the call?" He answers the call, And Tennessee Williams tells him, "Come and have lunch with me at the Court of Two Sisters." And he goes, "Yeah, I'm 80 miles away from you." And Tennessee Williams responds, "Well, then you better drive fast."
God dang it, Uncle Tennessee.
They
Why are you like this?
The beginning of the book, and it's a true story, is about them, having lunch at the Court of Two Sisters, and Tennessee Williams talking about his ladies and the women that he worked with and things like that, and just kind of him trying to access what he called the fog and just figure out, what his next step would be in writing, and how he had tried so hard to just jog that writing process, and just the different women in his life and what they meant to him, and those interviewing those women, including a few actresses that were lesbians at a time where you didn't really talk about that.
Yeah.
So, are we still sticking with our next book?
I think it's important to do so, but I think it will punish the both of us.
So, at the risk to our mental health, especially with this political climate right now,
we're reading 1984.
1984, George Orwell.
Get ready to get properly schooled on how to use words like Orwellian.
Oh God, I remember having to try and learn that in high school.
Yeah, I have a lot of feelings about when people use that word incorrectly. Or Kafka-esque.
Kafka-esque, which is funny because I have a Kafka-esque shirt.
Yep, it wasn't funny. It was intentional.
It was intentional. All right, my loves. Well, that is it for us this week. Unless you have anything else you want to add.
Say something nice to your mom if she's still with you, or go visit her.
Absolutely, give her a hug.
And understand that she is a complex human creature who's doing the best that she can.
Tell her that she's doing the best that she can,
even if she isn't.
And with that, have a great week. Go read a book.
Bye.